And then as we came down to a clearing, off to the left, there was this huge frigging craft. It must have been about 100 yards in size. It looked like a turtle shell to me. I mean, it was brilliant. And then bang, that was the last thing I remember from being in the car.
Gentlemen, shall we begin? Let's begin now.
Then you're running around the airport with your pants down.
Yeah. Holding a little dog. I'm an idiot.
I'm about to ask you to leave, Bob.
I'm an idiot.
When you know you're going to get burned, you start talking loud and over somebody. So here it comes, Joe. You're going to get burned.
I'm an idiot.
Next time we take Bob to the strip club, we'll say we're going to go see a bunch of kids.
It's the Idiots Podcast. If you're looking for a place to make you feel better about your life, you've come to the right place.
The text message said 2P.
Right.
What the frig is 2P?
Now, here's the three idiots. Steve, Bob, Kevin, and Joe.
People want to hear about people losing weight.
Oh, yeah. Welcome to the Idiots Podcast. Podcast about anything, everything, and nothing at the same time. It's a true miracle. We simply go where the tangent winds take us. I'm Conspiracy Steve, also known as the Premier Idiot, and this is episode 53. Oh, yeah. Awesome. We're going to have a great show. And, let's get it started the way we always do. Let's introduce who's in the house tonight. It is, first of all, Bob.
You can cut that right there.
Bob's in the house.
How's it going, Steve? It's been too long.
It's been 2 weeks. We had a week off because of all kinds of stuff going on. We'll get to in maybe just a little bit, but before that, we got to introduce our next host, our co-host, and that is
Kevin. K-E-V-I-N.
Kevin. You didn't figure it out? It's Kevin. How you doing, Kevin?
Good. What's up, Steve?
Thanks for joining us. We also have Italian Joe.
Hi, Steve.
What's up, Italian Joe?
Oh, just living my life down here in sunny Florida.
Great. Awesome. We also have another co-host tonight, a special co-host. His name is Tom. Tom, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Tom has an incredible life experience. He's going to share with us in just a few minutes. You definitely don't want to miss this conversation. But first, as always, I have to ask the question. And I always ask Bob because he's the only one that seems to know. Bob, do you know what time it is?
It would be news headlines, Steve.
Looks like we lost little Mr. Joe. There he is. He's back. All right. What we like to do, Tom, is like to go around and, share some stories about what's going on in the world and, have a little conversation about it. You are definitely welcome to step, right into the conversation. And in fact, if you have a story of your own, just go ahead and share it. Let's go and let's start off with, I won't ask Kevin because he sometimes disappoints me. Let's go with Joe. Joe.
Okay. Well, mine's more of a story that I saw on YouTube, and it was talking about a TV show. And the TV show they're talking about is like strange births and lives experiences. I don't know the name of the show, but the synopsis of it is there's a transgender couple.
Nice.
So he was a she and she was a he.
Wow.
And the she that was a he was pregnant with the she that was, wait a minute. Anyways, the father that is actually the mother.
Were they running track
pregnant.
at the Olympics? Okay, sorry.
I don't even know. Probably they were doing weightlifting.
Okay.
But anyways, they got pregnant. So the guy was pregnant.
Oh boy.
The guy gave birth.
And there it goes. It shows you men can get pregnant right there. There it is. It's proven.
It does. But here's the kicker: is when the baby was born, the guy that became the female was trying to breastfeed the baby.
Okay.
Which was bizarre. It was just this is the weirdest thing to keep track of. And then they were trying not to give the baby a gender, and the mother wanted to be the father, and the father wanted to be the mother, and they wouldn't let them do it. So the basically the baby has no birth certificate. Yeah, it's been a fun fiasco. I was in awe. Like, what are these people thinking?
Tom, what do you think about that?
I don't know.
You live down in.
What do I think about it?
You live down in the Miami area. You got all walks of life down there.
No, hey, Twitch is on. I don't know how a guy can get pregnant, but let me tell you, that's a hard friggin' story to follow.
Well, exactly. Well, the female became a male, so they had a beard and everything, and given birth to a baby in a little pool.
Great.
It was the weirdest thing. I'm like, can't be real. I felt bad for that baby trying to suck on a guy's boob. Trying to get milk.
It's kind of weird. A baby,
and all he's getting is man boob sweat, and it was gross. It was. I was just in awe.
Yeah. Can a male lactate with the hormonal treatments they go through?
Well, Bob, I got nipples. Can you milk me? So
if you go through hormonal therapy, maybe.
That's crazy to be telling your friends at school you're breastfeeding on your daddy's nipple.
I don't know. There's a certain thing that that's
crazy.
The weirdest thing to see.
Can't wait to see your suggested videos from this point forward, Joe.
Oh man.
It was on YouTube and people were commenting. It was basically two guys. There's the twins. I can't think of their name. They were hysterical, and it was just funny.
All right, we're going to go on there. I'll take the next story. First, before I go any further, I want to say hello to those who have jumped onto our live stream, including Blue Line. He's one of our most faithful followers, and I appreciate it. And he asked me to give him a shout out, and he doesn't have to ask. I just want to say hello, Blue Line. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so listen, days after a national eviction moratorium expired, the Biden administration issued a new one, more limited, but it's still keeping, I guess, in many areas of the country, landlords from collecting money from their tenants. We'll ask Bob what he thinks about this in a second, because he's got personal experience. And like the previous order, the 2-month moratorium issued comes from the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. Now, this I don't get. Like the CDC is saying, hey, these tenants don't have to pay rent. And I'm not quite sure how the CDC and...
Yeah, that does not seem like their jurisdiction at all.
The new ban on evictions covers parts of the United States. Here's kind of the explanation, which is still really a thin...
Public health.
It's that areas of the country are experiencing a substantial and high spread of the coronavirus. And that, according to the map of the CDC, that's like pretty much the whole country. The order, which cites the rise of the Delta variant, says without this order, evictions in these high transmission areas would likely increase cases. So I guess if people get kicked out of their homes, they're going to have to walk around the streets and they'll spread the virus. And since the moratorium's expiration, progressives have pressured the Biden administration to extend the evictions. I saw him comment on this. It doesn't sound like he's too thrilled about having to do this. And in fact, the Supreme Court ruled that this is illegal. And from what I understand, and Bob, maybe you'll know more, it's now kind of a legal battle to be able. I don't even know how they got the moratorium enacted in the first place.
Well, I don't know the story, but I could imagine public health would be an area where they could actually step in and issue a ban like that to stop flow or movement of a disease. So I could totally see that being within their kind of purview, because they weren't going to get it done otherwise, the Democrats.
Yeah.
And so I could see that being their legal justification for it. And they know it's just buying time, because the Supreme Court, you can appeal things. I mean, you see these cases drag out for a couple of years, even when they're fast tracked.
So I could see this. So agencies like the CDC can actually enact basically.
I have no idea. I said I would imagine they have that within their authority,
and they must, right? Because they
must. Of course. That's
Bob,
true.
Well, Bob, are you happy your people did this?
Yeah. What do you think about that, Bob? Your administration.
What's your opinion on this, Bob?
I do not agree with these eviction, the leniency there. You think someone's getting hurt at the end of the day.
You made a mistake. Just admit it.
Tom, we always jump on Bob because he's a registered Republican, but he votes Democrat. Like
I never mentioned that though.
Republican who votes Democrat.
Yeah, no, as a landlord, I don't like that. And you also know, I mean, the rent's going to come due at a certain point, right? If someone gets $5,000 behind because they're $1,000 a month, five months, that they're not banking that money to pay their landlord.
Right.
There's no way they're ever going to catch up.
Right.
Selfishly, I hope it goes a couple more months because I have a used car to sell in 8 weeks. And so I need them to still have money.
Right. Well, the government is actually giving people like yourself who are, owners of property that they're renting.
The states aren't distributing that properly, though. Some states have chosen not to distribute that to the landlords. I don't know enough about it. I just know that's a story in some states. I don't know which side is doing what, but I've heard the stories where the funds are there and the states aren't distributing to protect the landlords.
I didn't buy it.
Other states are also not abiding by the moratorium. I have a friend in Ohio who's got a friend with a ton of properties, and he said he is done if they follow the federal moratorium.
Yeah. I got a good friend who's got about 40 to 50 properties throughout Florida, and I was just talking to him the other day, and he's losing his mind because he's still got to pay the mortgage on him. He's got to pay so he's pretty.
Do you know if he's applied? I would imagine Florida is one of those states with the pool of funds available to landlords, but they have to kind of chase it down, unlike the individual families. So you're kind of just given to them.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure, how he's going about it, but I know that he's got out of those 40 or 50 properties, all basically West Palm Beach, Boynton Beach, Delray, Boca. He's in a position. I mean, he just went and got a $1.5 million loan because he's in trouble.
Gosh. And he can't sell his properties either because who's going to buy a property And then I'll tell you something else. So just since we're on this topic, a couple of the homes they actually left and sublet the rooms in the house.
No.
So he's like renting them these friggin' homes.
So they're making money. Oh my gosh. That's
and
crazy.
He's renting each room out for $600. The guy's making like $1,000 and not taking the money from the renters and not even paying him a cent.
Right.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Burn the house down. Burn the house down, collect the insurance.
Yeah, we've been lucky. We've got a few tenants and no one's even considered not paying. We've got really good tenants.
My wife and I did not buy a property in the New York City area because the owner, the seller, could not get rid of one of his tenants. And they were like, we saw them. They were like meth. They were like meth addicts.
How'd that work out? Would you have been up or down at this point?
There was one property we put a bid on for $380, and it's now up to like $850 or something like that.
Oh, I thought it was much higher.
Yeah, no, I know. I would have thought it was higher.
Well, speaking of money, we've got a new billionaire in the pop star space. Everyone probably saw Rihanna's a billionaire now, not from the music industry. Billionaire. Wow. It's amazing how many people you put your name on the right product, like the Jenners do with the beauty products. The beauty products are insane. Super low overhead, low staffing and everything, because there's companies that do this and they're essentially just branding and labeling. Mm-hmm. And so she owns 50% of Fenty Beauty, and I think it's 30% of Fenty X, the lingerie fashion line. And so just Fenty Beauty, her share of it brings her up to about $1 billion. I mean, it's crazy.
How can she do that in such a racist country?
It's amazing, isn't it? So yeah. Her, Jay-Z, Oprah.
Yeah, I said it.
Kanye.
I was kind of just kidding. We are a racist country.
You're not kidding. You're racist. Yeah, you're stereotyping.
Awesome. Well, Rihanna, welcome to the club.
Welcome to the club. You're the doorman. Yeah.
But I think it's safe to say that one thing that we're all fascinated about, to some extent at least, is the unknown. And one subject is in the news a lot lately, and that is UFO sightings. UFOs, alien, supernatural stuff. That phenomenon has been in books and movies, and we've all, I think, have seen a movie in our lifetime on aliens, alien invasions, whatever. But now it's becoming more and more apparent that we are truly not alone. And a recent survey indicates that 65% of Americans, I'm actually surprised it's that low, believe that there is intelligent life on other planets. Maybe a lot of us are just really hopeful because we, don't have much here. And I think it's safe to say that our co-host, Tom, is actually 100% sure of that. I'd have to, ask him to be sure, but I would suspect that he is, because his experience with a UFO became the first to be officially recorded as historically true by the U.S. government. So again, thanks, Tom, for joining us to talk about the subject.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right.
So you want to just take questions right off the bat, or you want me to just where do you want me to go with this?
I'm sure you've told this story 1,000 times, over the course of your life. So I hope it's okay that you tell it to, our listeners. I first got to know your story by watching Netflix, Unsolved Mysteries.
That was a terrible recap.
Oh, really? Okay. So that was season 1, episode 5, but Tom says don't watch it.
I didn't say that, but they left out all the documentation, which I don't know why they would do.
Really? That. Well, it's the editing. Yeah. It's the editing process. But I looked you up and I found you, and I was super excited. Yeah. So why don't you give us a recap of what the heck happened in 1969 in Massachusetts?
All right. Let me set this up for you first. The Berkshires back in the day, and you guys know this because you're all from New York, during the late 1990s, that was during the space race. And the Berkshires had Sprague Electric in our backyard. They're the ones who made the goodwill message that was left on the moon in the Apollo 11. That was July 20th, I think, is when that medallion was left on the moon by Buzz. And we had Pratt & Whitney, Sikorsky. We had all these manufacturing facilities in the area that had government contracts throughout the period during the space race. And so a lot of these people who worked there ate in our diner. And that's important because that's how this whole case ended up getting inducted, was because of these people. But as far as that night goes, it was September 1st, 1969. It was a holiday. And so because of that, there were a lot of people out, barbecues, what have you. A lot of people didn't really know each other or socialize with each other on a regular basis. So there were groups of people that all saw these UFOs, if you will, or balls of light or what have you. And it wasn't like they were just one family, it was hundreds. It was 250 witnesses that night. But there were a few people, Melanie Kirchstoffer, who was on Unsolved Mysteries. She had a legitimate incident that night as well, over water, over Lake Mansfield. And the craft actually was coming from Pittsfield through Great Barrington. And Melanie had actually seen it first. It was coming towards Sheffield, which we didn't have any idea that there was anything in the sky at that point, because we were in Sheffield, Massachusetts, where, only 3,000 people in the whole town. And the radio was off the air. And so we were heading back. We were driving actually towards where that craft was coming. And at the last minute, my mom took a shortcut over the Sheffield Bridge. And as we came out the other side of it, my grandmother had turned around to talk to us for a moment and saw this ball of light. It looked like an illuminated cue ball. And it rose up to about 2 to 3 stories. It was 4 times the size of a Volkswagen Beetle is the way I would describe it. They had a low light to it. You could definitely see it. It was illuminated, but it wasn't bleeding light. It was pretty self-contained. It was like a 2-watt light bulb. And so we kept driving down this dirt road. We were only going about 15 miles an hour. It was filled with potholes. So the windows were open. It was really hot night. So we're all, my brother and I are looking out the window, looking at this thing. And as we watched it, 2 rods, at least 2, I only remember 2, but there might have been more, rods of light came out of the thing on the sides, and it formed almost what would look like a sugar ice cream cone. And Ancient Aliens did a good episode or a good segment on this, and they had a really good description of it. The depiction they had was fantastic. But yet, it came down to the water. It looked like it was getting something out of the water, and then it went back up to the thing and started to go behind a line of trees. And as we're driving, we're looking to see where it went or what have you. My brother to the right of me saw one that looked orange, very similar to it, really low over the water. And we noticed that for a moment or two. So that was a second object. And then as we came down to a clearing, off to the left, there was this huge frigging craft. It must have been about 100 yards in size. It looked like a turtle shell to me. It didn't have windows, it didn't have landing gear, anything fancy. It's not like what you'd see on the line anywhere. This thing looked tarnished. It had different colors to it. As we were looking at it, because we were directly to the side of it, and it was up again about 3 stories. And as we watched it, you could tell that one side of it was darker. You couldn't really see it. It got lost in the night light. That you couldn't really see much of anything. But off to the right, it was shiny. It was like putting off its own light. So it was like the right side of it was putting off this reddish sheen. and where the shell of it kind of, you could see it very well. Like it was like the sheen was coming from the material the craft was made of. So you could see these lines in it, which is why I remarked that it looked like a turtle shell. And then the left side of it was quite dull. And the atmosphere changed. It got very still, quiet. You could hear a pin drop. And then it just felt, my mother remembers this pressure. I kind of remember it like being underwater, like the deep end of a swimming pool. It was just, everything seemed muted, but these particular sounds just seemed amplified, like in a tapping in a pool or something. And then there was this car lit up. I could see the dashboard. I could see the back of my mother's head, my grandmother. I mean, it was brilliant. And then bang, that was the last thing I remember from being in the car. I mean, that's kind of what happened.
And there's more than one object. Is that what I'm getting? So you're saying,
yeah, there
was two
three.
or three, but might have been more.
Yeah, there were three. And as we came off the bridge, where the white sphere was off to our left, it was a clock, it would have been like 9 o'clock. And then off to the right, the other one would have been at like 3 o'clock. And as we drove forward, the last one we saw would have been about 11 o'clock. And we were actually in the middle of these three pieces. And that's why we kind of thought, well, what we felt or what came over us, were these three objects communicating with each other? Was there something that, did we drive into some type of field that affected the neurons, in our head or something? What was this that made us feel this way? Because whatever it was affected the wildlife too. It wasn't just us. The wildlife got completely silent. No crickets, no anything. And then after that light came on and off again, then all of a sudden we did hear the crickets. Everything came to life afterwards. So whatever this was had affected everything around it for probably a couple hundred yards in every direction. We remember, being in a room that reminded me of an airplane hangar. I remember, these apparatuses mounted to the ceiling. I remember what looked like an autopsy table. I remember a lot of things from that night. A lot of it I don't talk about too much because it's, it's hard to get your head around sometimes. Even though it happened, it's still hard to talk about sometimes because some things are kind of personal. Uh-huh. But
so you have like a blank from the night, but also you have the little bits of the memories that like you think you're inside a craft, or
I remember a lot of it. And the thing is too, my mother remembers a lot of it, grandmother, my younger brother. And so over the
memory's the same, like you were in the same area.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My brother was with me at some point, and we heard my mother calling our names. I didn't see my mother, but I heard her voice. I believe it was my mother, and my grandmother remembers, be honest with you, my grandmother was the most traumatized from it. My brother and I seemed to come in and out of like this consciousness, like 1 minute we seemed to be willing and cooperative, and the next minute we were scared. So we were coming in and out of this, what would you call it? I mean,
disposition.
Yeah, like I remember sitting in this area, and I was just sitting there, and I could have ran, but I didn't. And then later on, that maybe 10 or 50 minutes later, I remember being so scared that I was looking for a particular, where do I run? And so something that happened that night was that I was on, you hear it a lot. I was on a table. Well, I was on this bench type of thing that rose from the floor, and then this apparatus lowered from the ceiling, and they kind of came like that. And so this cage-like apparatus was over me. And there were like these packets placed on my body that looked like raisins, big freaking packs like raisins. And I think my body was absorbing this stuff, is what I believe happened. And maybe whatever it was that was to calm me was wearing off, and I was getting, be given more. At one point I ran it throughout this door. There was this huge hallway that looked, it was a big friggin' area. It looked like an empty Walmart. All white floors with some gray markings on the ground. And that was like a carpet or something. It was a soft surface. And I was immediately brought back into the room. My brother had a club foot. He remembers a lot of attention being put on his brace.
So the lights and all that with the car, that's just kind of like that's nothing compared to what happened at one point when the car was stopped, apparently. And then the next thing you know, you blank out. And the next thing you know, you're in a big room and you're experiencing did you see any aliens, basically? Did you see any faces? Did you see any figures, anything like that?
Yeah.
Did they all look like Natasha Henstridge or Will Smith?
No, more like, more like, those girls from Penthouse that we talked about earlier.
Sign me up. Yeah. This concludes part 1 of our interview with Mr. Tom Reed and his account of the Berkshire UFO incident in 1969. In part 2, Tom tells us more about his frightening experience and what happens next.
I was grabbed by my left arm, and it hurt. And I remember that. But yeah, it looked like an orangey gold head, and it had a very thin body. And it looked, was it robotic? Was it uncanny valley? Was it living and breathing? I have no idea.